The statistics, nothing short of alarming. Reports of sexual assaults on campus, too numerous to ignore, and yet so many cases remain unreported and unresolved in the often toxic mix of heavy drinking and hookup culture. At the core of so many cases, the question of consent. Can consent be defined? And can teaching students how to put it into practice prevent lives from being destroyed? We'll meet with several people tonight who believe it can. Tova Danovich says her nightmare began after a late night out when she decided to crash at a friend's apartment, sharing a futon with a guy she used to date.
We had all met up. We decided to go out for the evening. At some point later in the evening, I woke up and felt him having sex with me.
The then 19-year-old, a freshman attending college in New York City, says she was frozen in shock, staying silent through the ordeal while another friend slept just a few feet away.
You're just paralyzed by not knowing how to react to what's going on. I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't really want to make a scene. I just pretended to be asleep.
Tova's experience points to the often complicated and misunderstood ways people react during a sexual assault.
If anyone had ever asked me, if someone has sex with you and you don't want them to have sex with you, will you stop them from doing that? The answer would have 110% been yes. And then when the situation actually arose, that was not my response to it.
People talk about fight or flight all the time without realizing that the third piece is freeze. It kicks in when we're in a situation where we believe we cannot escape.
It's not uncommon in the most typical kind of college sexual assault, acquaintance rape. According to a sweeping survey of 27 universities, more than 1 in 5 female undergrads were victims of sexual assault or misconduct.
It's on us.
And we're seeing a growing tide of advocacy from high-profile personalities.
To get in the way before it happens.
And Lady Gaga, with her song It Can Happen to You, speaks to the trauma of victims. There's also student advocacy.
Is this okay? Can I put my hand here?
Yes.
And a big push toward prevention awareness campaigns attempting to clarify sexual consent.
Silence does not equal consent.
When she's too drunk to function, it's rape.
There are even new apps designed to record partners' consent.
Yes.
Add drinking to the mix and it complicates things even more. Alcohol or drugs are involved in as much as 80% of sex assault cases.
He had purchased Strawberritas for me to drink.
Molly Morris says she quickly became too out of it to give consent. She was a student at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, hanging out at a party with a classmate, Corey Mock, when she suddenly felt sick.
I was throwing up and feeling really dizzy, could not feel my arms or legs.
Next thing she knew, she blacked out.
The next morning I woke up and I was completely naked in the sheets at the base of the bed. He was at the top of the bed. I basically sat up and had just completely disorientation. All that was going through my brain is I need to get out.
Unlike Tova, she says she immediately defined it as rape and filed a report with the school saying that Corey, a wrestler on the school team, forced himself on her when she was in no condition to consent.
The person that I was 2 years ago today is not even close to being the person that I am now. I now have depression streaks, anxiety streaks, night terrors.
It's on his record. His life is ruined.
There is another side to this. C.D. Mock is Corey's father, and he says his son was completely blindsided by Morris's accusation.
He was just blown away. He didn't even know how to react because he just didn't, that wasn't what he expected.
Corey, who declined to be interviewed, told his father that he remembered the night very differently and that he and Morris had consensual sex.
Would I ever think that my son would be involved in sexual assault? Absolutely not.
C.D. Mock says his family is financially and emotionally drained from the fallout of what he says is the almost impossible task of proving consent.
Where does consent start and where does it end? I mean, I don't know. So let's remember, we're dealing with young people, many of them who are very inexperienced. there's alcohol around without supervision.
The university initially dismissed the charges against Corey, but then, weeks later, reversed that ruling, finding him responsible. A year after that, a local court said the school improperly shifted the burden of proof. Corey was cleared, but by then, CD says the damage was done.
If you're labeled a rapist, you can't go to parties. You can't be with any of one of the opposite sex.
All of the court documents are in here.
Molly says she feels damaged too, still maintaining she could not have consented and that it was rape.
Life after the assault is not even close to being what it could have been. Nothing's the same at all.
A lack of a no is not a yes.
Ian Tolino at the University of Maryland is a peer educator known as Consent Bro, part of a growing effort at universities across the country explicitly teaching consent.
If somebody's assaulted, they could just not say anything.
The idea that consent must be explicitly obtained before and during sex.
We talk about what consent is in terms of action and in terms of verbal consent, nonverbal consent.
2 states have even made consent a legal requirement at their public universities.
What qualifies as an ongoing consent? Nobody knows. Nobody can answer that question.
All of this is highly controversial and complicated. Is it even realistic?
It seems very black and white. In practice, it's a lot more difficult than that.
So we brought together Tova Danovich, CD Mock, and other unique voices to talk about consent on campus. When we come back, what they have to say.
You consider that victim blaming?
Yes.
I consider that being a responsible parent.